You know what? Let's start with the 60 Minutes story because that got me fired up. It actually got me angry. It got me really angry. It got me angry for a few reasons, okay? But I think the big reason is just when I was growing up, 60 Minutes was the news to me. And what I mean by that is that it was in 60 Minutes, and for anybody who's not seen this program before, 60 Minutes is a program that runs for 60 minutes, if you can believe it. And the reason they run for 60 minutes is try to give as much people as many kind of in-depth stories in like little time blocks as possible while not overwhelming people, you know? Because as much as I like to do an hour and a half long documentary, not most people don't have that much time to find out about like microplastics in the water or local river pollution and how wastewater is polluting local streams. Most people don't have an hour and a half to focus on each one of these topics. And so the 60 Minutes idea is to send reporters to all these places, have them film so much content, and then come back and they'll just take the best of it and they'll run with that. There's a lot of times where 60 Minutes will go places and they'll film for days and then none of it will be published. And you can talk with people who worked with 60 Minutes before about how annoying that is to put that much work into it. But the reason why is they're trying to cut the best and present the best. And they only have a 60-minute time period to explain all of the world's issues to, get this, the largest audience in the United States. And when I say that, I mean that. As in 60 Minutes is the largest news show, like hour long, like in presenting of this format. 60 Minutes knocks all the competition out of the water. Outside of like the Super Bowl and other really big TV events, when 60-minute segments air and when big 60 Minutes interviews air, millions upon millions of Americans, tens of millions of Americans, sit down and watch these segments. And they've been doing this since the late 60s. And over that time, they've only had 3 producers, and they've built a sterling reputation during that period, which is why they have so many viewers of, largely an older demographic, still millions of Americans. And it's that access to that older demographic, I think, and which is a strong voting bloc, which some politicians might fear. Maybe one in particular who's in the White House right now. Anyway, this is the way 60 Minutes has dominated the news scene. And that's also how it dominated my household. Again, I said to me, it was the news growing up, because when I saw my grandmother watching the news, I was raised by my grandparents, it would be 60 Minutes. And so I got used to their presenters. I got used to their format. I watched a lot of their stories growing up, and that was the news to me. Yeah, it was those 60-minute segments. Now, recently, CBS, which owns 60 Minutes, and its parent company, Paramount, have been trying to go through a merger with a company called Skydance. Okay, the specifics are not important. What is important is the detail that for this merger to be approved for Paramount and this other company, and for everybody to make a lot of money, it has to be approved by the chief executive, the President of the United States. Now, I would argue that this is a bad system. That the idea that the President of the United States is the one overseeing mergers just seems like a rank opportunity for corruption. For them to take kickbacks in order to allow mergers, or to prevent mergers in order to protect their own business. Or in order to, say, leverage political coverage. Now, CBS, again, which is a company that runs 60 Minutes, which, again, CBS is then under the parent company Paramount, the one doing this merger. CBS is currently being sued by the Trump administration. They're being sued because of a Kamala Harris interview where he says it was edited favorably towards her, and that they cut out sections of the interview that made her look bad. Now, 60 Minutes runs for 60 minutes. Again, sorry, groundbreaking stuff here at the Dylan Burns TV channel. So that means each segment, you're going like 12 minutes, 13 minutes, 14 minutes, 15 minutes. You're pushing it, you know? So you only have so much content you can stuff in there. And so if you're interviewing a presidential candidate and you're trying to deliver this person in less than 100 days to the American people and inform them about who they are as a new candidate on the scene, that's a lot to do in a short window. And that's what 60 Minutes tried to do with that interview. Now, you can not agree with how they edited it. You can agree with how they edited it. You can all go and watch that 60-minute segment on your own if you want to, and you can go research what sections of it they edited out. You want to know what? I don't think they edited it in order to make her look fantastic. I think maybe editing out a lot of the flowery words or a lot of the redundant words or a lot of the ums and ums makes anybody look better. And when you're running on a short time schedule, and definitely somebody who's dealt with this trying to edit for my documentaries and such, I'm not going to keep every and and or all of the words that are flowery or addition words or like adjectives that are not necessary to describe the story that's being told. Now, even if you disagree with my evaluation that it was not like rank and file manipulation, and there's like some areas, well, if you look at this, look at that, okay, fine. Does that mean that they should be sued? Because if this case was to be taken to trial, the case being made by Donald Trump is it was manipulation and horrible of them to edit Harris's interview and make her not look as bad. What's the crime? What's the civil or criminal offense? Either or, okay? I'll open it up to criminal, civil, bird law, it doesn't matter. There's no crime. If this was taken to court, Trump would lose. Just like if, for example, that case against Ann Seltzer, the pollster who put forward a bad poll for Trump. Just like that lawsuit, if it goes to court, it will lose. But in this case, CBS and its parent company, specifically the parent company, Paramount, wants to go forward with that merger. And not to mention, Donald Trump has not made a secret that he believes the press is his enemy and that he's willing to crack down upon them. I mean, look how the Associated Press was kicked out of the press pool because they didn't want to change in all of their publications references to the Gulf of Mexico into the Gulf of America, which is recognized by one country, the United States. And the Associated Press works all around the world. I remember chilling with Associated Press reporters outside of Kiev. So this is the media environment that Trump is trying to establish, in my mind, is very clear. He wants to intimidate these publications to cover his opponents less favorably and cover him more favorably, and to leave the critiques at the chopping block. And this is not a new feature of Donald Trump. This is an old feature of Donald Trump. While he's been portrayed as the free speech warrior because he tells it as it is, if you tell it as it is and it's not in his bubble, in his worldview, that's a problem. Just like when Bill Maher back in the day made jokes about Trump, what did Trump do? He sued him. He sued Bill Maher for jokes, he sued Ann Seltzer for bad polls, and he sued 60 Minutes for interviews, for interviews of his political opponents. Mind you, he won. He won the election. Harris lost. So the election's over. The interview did not manipulate the American public into electing Harris because the editing was just that sharp. I mean, any registerable impact from the 60 Minutes interview and her positive and her negative is really not documentable. I mean, the honeymoon period wore off. So what is exactly even the suit about? If the 60 Minutes interview published the interview how it should have been published, so all of it, which they never would have done because they've never done it that way, or if they were to publish just this piece or this piece more, that would have mean they would have lost even bigger. Would it mean a bigger House majority? Is that the implication? You won. You already won. I've never seen such whiny, such lousy, such just petulant winners in my entire life. They won the election. They didn't win a majority of the American people's support, but they won the election. And they still are whining. They won an election even though they didn't get the majority of Americans to vote for them. They won an election despite the fact that their candidate was a convicted felon. They won an election despite the fact that he tried to overturn the election. He won the election despite the fact there were multiple open investigations into him. He won despite everything. And his response to that is great. Now, the people who could have possibly have stopped it, we need to punish them. I mean, for example, the person, this is another free speech issue. It might not sound like it immediately, but it is. The Republican cybersecurity expert who said that this is the most secure election of our lifetime after 2020. What happened to him? He was immediately fired. Okay, already bad response. But recently, he used the DOJ to open up an investigation into him. He's investigating the people who told the truth about the 2020 election, even though that dude is a dyed red Republican. He's an elephant. But because he wouldn't lie about the election, we got to open up investigations. Look for something. Maybe we can find a DUI or some other drug offense or maybe we could, Donald Trump ain't the free speech president. So after CBS and Paramount presumably talk about the merger and think about how Trump has lashed out at other media organizations, they have decided to change 60 Minutes. So the 60 Minutes chief, after sensing changes that were going to be made that he thought was not good for their creative freedom, he decided to resign as an act of protest against the changes that are being made by CBS to 60 Minutes. Mind you, again, they've only had 3 hosts in the entire existence of CBS since it was started in the late 60s. The longtime head of CBS's 60 Minutes resigned Tuesday as the network's parent company contemplates a settlement with President Trump over his lawsuit, focusing on an interview that the show did with then Vice President Harris last fall. In an emotionally charged meeting Tuesday afternoon, and again in a note to staff released publicly shortly after, the show's executive producer, Bill Owens, said he was departing after 37 years with CBS News following months of heavy-handed treatment of the show by corporate leaders. Owens, only the 3rd leader of the show in its more than half-century history, did not explicitly cite Trump, but the president's open rancor towards 60 Minutes looms over all. Corporate parent Paramount and its controlling owner, Sherry Redstone, are seeking the approval of federal regulators to sell it to the son of Oracle founder Larry Ellison. The billionaire software mogul is a friend of Trump who visited the president at the White House earlier this year. Over the past months, it has become clear that I would not be allowed to run the show as I've always run it, to make independent decisions based on what was right for 60 Minutes, right for the audience. So having defended the show and what we stand for from every angle over time with everything I could, I am stepping aside so the show can move forward. At the meeting, according to 2 attendees, Owen said he had lost independence from corporate. The 2 people required anonymity to speak publicly due to the fraught professional environment at the show and the network. 60 Minutes correspondent Scott Presley, a longtime collaborator and friend of Owens, told colleagues, "This isn't something Bill is doing of his own volition. There was no choice in any of this," according to one of the attendees. Last fall, before regaining that's the story background that we've already told you before. Look, the corporate sale is looming over all of this. Trump's blatant abuse and censorship of the media is looming high over all of it. And look, we could do this all day. I just went into some of the clearest examples of censorship. What about when Donald Trump threatened the broadcasting license of news companies that he didn't think was giving him fair enough coverage? This is who Donald Trump is. And we were always dependent upon the media not playing ball, because the press is one of the checks on the executive, is one of the checks on government. I mean, right now, Congress has usurped itself and has decided that the power of the purse does not matter, that they're going to let Doge rummage around in our congressionally created institutions, whether it's the CFPB, the Department of Education. They're just going to lay off staff at a whim. What we budgeted does not matter anymore. What Congresses wants does not matter anymore. We're going to concentrate more and more and more and more power in the chief executive, which has been the historically like a libertarian leading Republican argument for quite some time now. Now that it has been completely thrown out, I don't see anybody within the Republican Party or base complaining about it. I mean, there's some, but when we talk about those near centers of power, no. And so this type of treatment towards the media will only not become the norm if the media properly kicks back. In CBS, the news network of Edward R. Murrow, I mean, the dude who was in London during the Blitz, who covered the war day by day, and of his fame, who sucked those unfiltered cigarettes in and spewed out the straight and honest facts about our government and its misgivings and its misdeeds. His network is going to bend over and allow the Trump administration to take money out of their pockets. Settle out of court. How are they going to give them money? They would have won. And so what is the settlement about? The settlement is about pleasing the Trump administration to allow the merger to go forward. And that right there is putting greed, profit, and big fat bonuses for those at top, for those at the tippy top of these companies, over the journalists, staff, and people who made 60 Minutes a pillar of the American press landscape. Without 60 Minutes, I mean, that it's one of the strongest straight shooting, still popular TV shows that is still gathering many Americans around the dinner table to monitor their country, and that the American people still trust. I mean, 60 Minutes has built up a lot of credibility. And so its credibility is what scares Trump. And somebody who lives in lies, somebody who has to craft his own reality in media bubbles to survive because of his lies, whether it's, I'm going to end the war in 24 hours, whether it's the lies around the signal intelligence, the classified intelligence, whether it's the lies around the election, the big lies, whether it's lies about his financial history, whether it's lies about the budget, whether it's lies about tariffs, whether it's lies about Ukraine. He lies so much. That type of credibility scares him because the whole country knows he lies, but sometimes it's just so much. It's hard for people to kind of separate what's true and what's not true. I think it can kind of produce a certain amount of ambivalence that's very scary. But what's scary to those who want that ambivalence, people like Trump, is organizations like 60 Minutes that still have credibility, that when people hear them, they're like, oh, that's true, because I trust them. If you shoot their credibility in the foot, you're going to be losing a strong, credible institution that can be a check on power. And I don't really see any other news group that can fill that void. I'm not saying it's impossible. What I am saying is now is not the time to fill that power vacuum. Oh, gosh, man. It's sad. It really is sad. CBS should not cave.